to the Innerfire podcast. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with Lee Phelps, who was the lead singer of Kentucky HeadHunters back in the late 80s. Now, the Kentucky HeadHunters burst onto the Nashville music scene in 1989 with the release of their album, Pickin' on Nashville. That album won Album of the Year in the CMA Awards. They also won a Grammy for that album for the best performance of a duo or a group. That was across all genres. Lee sung with Kentucky HeadHunters for a few years, but then left and formed a duo with his brother Doug. That duo was called Brother Phelps and also had great success in Nashville. But during those several years when Lee was in the Nashville music scene, he always felt God calling him to something different. So we had a chance to talk about that, what God was doing in his life during those years and what God has done in his life since that time. So I think you'll find the conversation very interesting. Sit back and have a listen to our conversation. We're glad you're with us today. Lee, welcome to the Innerfire podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. How you doing this morning?
Doing great. Certainly appreciate you taking your time out to sit down, have a little chat with us, and give us a little bit of history on the life of Lee and and the things that God has done along the way. So, I've
a long conversation because God's done a lot along the way.
I hear you. Well, we're looking forward to unpacking some of that and hearing about it. So we'll always jump right in and kind of give us a little bit of a background of, who Lee is from your childhood. Were you brought up in church? Did you have a spiritual background in your childhood? And just kind of start there and kind of move us forward.
All right. Well, I was born and raised in a little northeast Arkansas, southeast Missouri kind of area, a little Delta area there where it's just, cotton fields and bean fields. And my dad is a minister, which makes me a PK, a preacher's kid, so.
Oh, yeah.
And I was always told when I was a kid, people come up and go, "You're that preacher's boy, ain't you?" Yeah. Well, y'all are the worst ones. I went, I think I can do that. So anyway, around the age of 6 or 7, my dad felt the call to ministry, and to this day, he is 92 years old and he is still with me. And he is officially the oldest active pastor in the state of Arkansas, if not the United States. I don't know, but and he just passed his 57th year in the pulpit.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I went to church when I was a kid a lot. I mean, I went to church a lot. So there I have deep roots and a deep background in it all.
I understand. So, what you I'm assuming probably like most music people that were brought up in the church, your music beginnings probably began in the church. Would that be accurate?
Well, my whole family played instruments and sang, at family gatherings and as well as church. There was always, anytime we got together for any kind of dinner, the family got together, there was always instruments pulled out. And so they were always there, hey, grab that guitar and so the music was always there. And when I was in church, of course, we didn't have a choir. Anybody who wanted to sing, sang. And so, I'd be singing along. And then I realized I was hearing harmony parts. I was starting to pick out harmony parts. That guy was singing this, and that person over there was singing something different. So I started kind of trying to sing along with that person and that person. So then I discovered, I could hear harmony parts and I could actually, know where to go with them. And so I discovered that at an early age. And so singing just became the thing that I love to do. And that's kind of how that all got to be.
Right. So you were, part of, you were still a young guy when you started your, I'd say your known country music career, when you joined Kentucky HeadHunters and had all that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But so what age was it when you really said, hey, this country music thing or professional music is something I want to pursue? Or, where did you really kind of get serious about it?
Well, I knew what I wanted to do. I was listening to WLS radio back in 1964. So I was, just about 11 years old. And I always listened to WLS every night. It would fade in to the airwaves about 6 o'clock at night. And I would sit down in front of this big radio my dad had and listen to all the current hits. And one night this song came on called I Want to Hold Your Hand by this new group called the Beatles. And I was it just slapped me upside. I thought, what is that? That song just mesmerized me. And from that point on, I knew I pretty much knew what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to do that. Those guys really just clicked something in me. And but to get serious about it, it took me a few more years to really get where I was playing in bands and that kind of thing. And so, I'd say about mid-70s, I started getting kind of serious about playing, started being in bands, and actually started getting paying gigs and things like that.
Right. Now, from what I understand, and you can enlighten us on this, but during your most known country music period, I guess, when you were with Kentucky HeadHunters, when you were playing with your brother, might not have been the most spiritual time in your life.
Without saying.
So if that's a safe statement, when did you kind of start getting away from that background that your dad had laid? And obviously he was still pastoring during those times. I mean, what did that look like?
Well, as soon as the ink was dry on my high school diploma, I left home. And, that was a great place to grow up, but it wasn't a great place to be an adult. Wasn't much to do. You either be a farmer, work in a factory, that kind of stuff. So it wasn't much there to do. But so I made my way out to Tucson, Arizona. And, I was I had gagged on church. I'd been to church so much that finally one time I was just about 17, and my mom come in and wake me up for Sunday school. I'm like, I'm not going today. And she cried all day and everything. So, but when I left home, went out to Tucson, my dad had a brother out there named John. And so my dad called him, asked if I could stay with him for a while. So I did. I went out there, and he had a little travel trailer out the side of his yard. And I stayed in that thing and got me a job and got myself worked up to where I could, pay my bills and get a place to live and all that kind of stuff. So from that point on, I kind of just didn't bother with church, and I knew Jesus was my savior. I'd known that for all my life. I never forgot about that, and he certainly never forgot about me. But I was pursuing other things and trying to figure out what life was about and grow up and figure out who I was and how I was supposed to operate. And I was playing music. So I was out there on the road in a little 69 banana yellow Dodge van with the whole group in the band and all of our equipment. We used to running from one end of the country to the other. And so I was, caught up in that lifestyle, just late night stuff and partying and all that. And did that for a few years. Finally moved to Nashville and in 1982. And my brother was already there. He was playing with Ronnie McDowell. So I made my way there and just trying to figure out what to do in Nashville, how that all worked. So it was 1986. I remember distinctly. It was being 1986. I had a car issue, and I took it to this mechanic that my brother recommended me to. And so when I went in to pay for my car, and I was sitting there writing out the check, and there was a little red New Testament sitting on strategically on the corner of that guy's desk, the mechanic's desk. And we was just chatting and talking. And I said, oh, a little New Testament here. And he said, yeah, just take it with you if you want to. And so I did. I said, thank you. I'll take it. I hadn't cracked the Bible in years. And I took that little New Testament home, and I just picked it up and started reading it. And man, I mean, I started reading right in Matthew, and the more I read, the words were leaping off the page at me. It was like I'd never heard of this man before. I was raised in church, had it drilled in me, but I was reading for myself as an adult. I was amazed at what it said to me. And from that point on, I pretty much had started turning a corner in my life, and I became an avid student of the Bible from that point on. And so I've been studying it ever since. I've got a library full of reference books and commentaries over here, and the more I study it to this day, from that day to this day, the more I study it, the more I see. And so then, and 1986 was also the year I ended up in the band, the Kentucky HeadHunters, and took us a few years to get the record deal, but I was, all that happened in the same time period. Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question?
Well, it did. You know, you're not a lot different than a lot of people in that, you know, you hit that 18 to 20 year old range. You either go to college or get out of the house and start doing something on your own, and you drift away. And, you know, at some point in time, the gospel has to be something that your parents talked about to something you personally own and experience, and it becomes a personal relationship with you and Christ, not just riding on the coattails of mom and daddy, right? So I think that's a pretty common experience. But tell you one thing that's interesting to me, and that we talk about a lot. See, that guy, that mechanic, was bold enough to have that New Testament there in his office, and you know, we talk a lot about integrating our faith, and that's just a real small way you can do it, is to keep the Bible out there visible for people that do just what you did. You know, we just don't know where somebody's at when we meet them on the street or out in the marketplace. We don't know what's going on. We just don't know when that right time is going to be. So just would encourage, you know, other people to do a similar thing. You got that sunlight coming in there, Ricky Lee.
Yeah, I'm adjusting.
Like it kind of making you look angelic. Is what it's making you look like.
I'm far from that. So I think that gets me out of the pathway a little bit there.
There we go. So along about that time, you said you got that same year, you got involved with the Kentucky HeadHunters, and y'all began to play. And tell us a little bit about that story, just about how you got the record deal and what that looked like with Kentucky HeadHunters.
Well, first of all, I want to say, you know, what we was talking about, that man, that mechanic, he has no idea. He don't have a clue how he changed my life. Right. And you know, it's really none of his business. He'll find out at some point. When he gets to heaven, I'll go, hey man, you're the one that gave me that Bible. I'm glad to see you here. All right. So anyway, you know, we played in the band, got the band together. I wasn't interested in getting involved. I'd already been in Nashville for a couple of years and beat myself to death, and, you know, went to gigs and played horrible gigs in horrible places. And so I wasn't interested in being in the band, but I went up there to hear my brother and them. He said, hey man, you need to come and hear what we're doing. I'm like, I don't care what y'all are doing. So, but I went up there, and I happened to just get up and sing a song just for fun in the middle of it all. And when I did that, suddenly my brother was, you know, he jumped in on the harmonies, and suddenly we realized, you know, this is a sound. This is something that's different, because it's the rock and roll players, but my country voice was kind of plastered on top of that, and it made there was something interesting about it to us. And so I gave in and joined the band, and we piddled around for 2 or 3 years. In 1988, we'd made a little tape. Somebody gave us enough money to go in and cut a little tape. So we went in there and cut 8 songs, and and I thought, okay, well, that's it. We'll give these cassettes out to our friends, and that'll be it. We can break up, and I can go back to my day job I had, and everything will be fine. So we did that, and it got in the hands of a couple of industry people somehow. And so we get a call, and they're wanting us to do a showcase. The people have been hearing, somehow or another, the tape got around and people were hearing it, and every record label in town like swore up and down they were going to sign us. So we did a showcase, and it was the worst show we probably ever did. And they were all the record labels were there, all of them that were ready to fight over us because they loved what they were hearing or whatever. And so we got up and played the show, and every one of those record label guys walked by us, shook our hands, said, well, once they saw us, they were like, I don't know about this, long haired, weird guys up there. I don't know if this is going to work. And so they all shook our hands and said, if we were in LA, we'd sign you guys up in a minute, but I don't think Nashville's ready for this. And so I was like, okay, cool. And I went to the bar and got me a cocktail to end the night, and thought, okay, that's it. Good. We can break up now and we can go about our way. Nothing's going to happen here. And I got a peck on my shoulder after everybody else had gone. Guy pecked me on the shoulder and said, yeah, my name's Buddy Cannon. He said, I'm the A&R guy at Mercury Polygram Records here in town. And it's just got a new president. Harold Shedd is the new president of Mercury Polygram. And he said, he really liked what you guys did, and he wondered if y'all have a tape. And I said, I thought everybody had a tape. You don't have a tape? And he said, no. And so we had our manager at that time. I said, that guy needs a tape. He wants a tape. And so we got him a tape, and I went over and got introduced to Harold. And Harold was, of course, he was the guy that produced all of the Alabama stuff and all that for all those years. And he'd just taken over this record label, which was, just kind of barely hanging on. And he said, I really like what you guys did up there. He said, I think there might be something to this. And he said, I'm going to take this tape and I'm going to listen to it. And he said, I'll call y'all next week. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever. I'm thinking, we're never hearing from you again. So, well, sure enough, the next week he called us, and we all went to his office and had a meeting. He said, I really like what I hear. And he said, if you guys will go into the studio and do 2 more songs to add to these 8, go in there and do whatever it is y'all did to get these 8 done, do 2 more. He said, I'm going to sign this. I'm going to sign you up. I was like, what? I was just shocked, because I'm thinking, first of all, here's Harold. He's a producer more than he is a record label guy. And I thought, he's just going to let us go in there and do whatever we want to, and he's going to put it out. It shocked me. And so we went there and cut 2 more songs, and he signed us up. We put out Picking on Nashville, and wow, it all just went bananas after.
Tell us a little bit about that, because, what is life like for an artist when it goes bananas and you start getting all the accolades and getting all the calls and doing all the shows, winning all the awards? I mean, describe that period of life just from a practical standpoint, and then from a spiritual standpoint too. Kind of what was that like?
Okay. Well, first of all, most acts, any act in any genre of music, they get signed to their record deal and they put out an album and they put out a single, and they get a little airplay and a little action here and there, and and they kind of get a chance to build their career, sort of develop it, you know, as they go. What happened with us was that didn't happen. When we hit, we put out our first video, and Stan Hitchcock was the owner of CMT, and it was in its infancy. Mm-hmm. So he saw the video, and he's like, "Yep, I'll play that thing for you guys. I love it. I'll play it." And he started putting that video out, and people just were, I mean, it was catching on so fast. So we didn't have time to grow into our success. We went from playing, and then, you know, Hank Jr. heard the album, and he put us on his tour. So we went from playing, you know, 100 seat clubs to 20,000 people a night, like that. Wow. And so it was so fast. Everything was so fast. It's like we were just hanging on for dear life. We didn't have a chance to grow anything. It was there. I mean, it was just not there, and then it was there. And so we just hung on best we could. And, you know, then awards, then we started getting nominated for awards, and we sold, you know, 1 million records in just a short period of time, and getting all, you know, we were doing interviews all day long, you know, go here, go there. We didn't have any control over our lives anymore. It was just suddenly we were, okay, go over there, go over here, you got to do this interview, you got to go to this record store for an autograph signing, you got to go over here, you got to talk to this guy, we're going to do this, and then we got a sound check, do the show. And after the show, we're going to go over to the syndicated radio station. We're going to do an interview at midnight. And finally, we climb in the bunk of the bus to get a little sleep. Boom, next morning, we woken up. Here's the key to your hotel room. As soon as you get in there and drop off your stuff, we got to go to this interview. And it just was that all the time. It just was rolling all the time. And then we got, you know, nominated for some awards. And first one was I think it was the ACM Awards, Academy of Country Music out of California, which was Dick Clark's version of the Country Music Awards. And we won that award. I don't know what it was, a Horizon Award or Best New Group or whatever it was. I don't remember now. But that was the first one. Then we got nominated for a couple CMAs. We got nominated for Best New Vocal Group or Best Vocal Group, and Album of the Year. We got those two. We snagged those two, and then whoever produces the Album of the Year also gets automatically Producer of the Year. So we got Producer of the Year as well. And boy, we were making a lot of waves, and a lot of the we were telling our story about how the album came about. You know, this guy gave us $5,000. We cut this album, and the producers in Nashville, they were livid at us for telling that story. You know, because, you know, they've got their own little gig going. You know, I'm getting $40,000 to produce the album, and I'm getting 3 points on the album, and da 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 da. We made a Album of the Year for $5,000. I mean, I had one of the big producers in Nashville. I was in there, and we were in the studio I was cutting a duet with Roy Rogers. He shoved me against the wall. What are you doing going around telling everybody you ought to cut this out for $5,000? I'm like, hey, dude, I'm sorry. That's just the way it happened. I'm sorry. And so it made a lot of waves in Nashville, and we were, you know, we called the album Picking on Nashville, which was kind of funny, you know, because Chet Atkins, he did an album called Picking on the Beatles, where he did instrumental versions of a bunch of Beatles songs. And so we called it Picking on Nashville. And then they started realizing that we really were picking on them. And so we went through ironic turn there. We went through a tough time. I mean, we always had a tough time with radio, because we put out Walk Softly, and it had that grungy intro on it, and boy, they were like, well, this ain't country music, this is Van Halen or whatever. And so that, you know, had a lot of trouble with radio, but the videos kept really being successful, and then that forced the radio to have to play the songs. And so it was a wild ride. I mean, it was just and we finally, you know, we ended up with 2 Grammy nominations as well. And we got one of those. One was for Best Vocal Group, and one was for Best New Artist, which was in the general category. That was outside the country genre. We were up against Wilson Phillips and the Black Crows and Lisa Stansfield and I don't know. Mariah Carey. Mariah won that one. But we got the other one, and getting that Grammy was the epiphany moment for me.
Right.
I had a spiritual experience happen when we got the Grammy, and it was from that point that I realized I may be in the wrong place here.
Tell us about that. What happened?
Well, they called our name out, and the winner is Kentucky HeadHunters. So we go up to the stage to get the Grammy, and as soon as I stood up, I felt like I'd gone deaf. I couldn't hear anything. Total silence, like I was in a soundproof bubble as I was walking up to the stage. And I could see people applauding, and I knew there was noise being made, but it was total silence.
Wow.
Got up to the stage, and they handed me the Grammy. They always bring everybody one out. It's not the one you take home, but they bring one out, and they handed my Grammy. And as soon as that Grammy hit my hand, I heard a voice say, "Is that it?" And I thought, oh, that's weird. And then, I could hear again after that. But the Lord kept everything real silent till he could say those three words, "Is that it?" That's what he said. And I thought, what's that mean? And I realized I had become really miserable. The higher we got in the stratosphere, the more miserable I became. And I was thinking, what's wrong with me? I've got more success than I ever dreamed of in the music business. What's going on? I felt horrible all the time. And when that voice said that to me, I realized after a while that he was saying, it was the God saying, "I've given you more than you ever asked for, more than you ever dreamed of. I've given you all this success. Are you done now? Are you ready to do something that I want you to do?" That's why it finally all settled into me that way. And I started trying to figure out how I was going to get myself out of all that, because it's a hard thing to get into, but once you're in there, it's real hard to get out. It's and nobody really ever wants to necessarily.
Right.
But I do, because I was miserable. I was not a happy guy. I didn't like anything that was going on past the hour and a half on stage. That was fine. We was playing music. Everything else, the entourage, we suddenly had this big entourage around us that were telling us, giving us all kinds of advice about what we need to do with our career, to do this, do that. And most of these people, I didn't even like. I didn't know where they came from. I didn't like them. I wouldn't have them over at my house for dinner. And I was thinking, who are you to come in here and tell me what I need to do? And so that was the misery. It was just all that politics and hype and all the people around me going on. Some of them wiping white powder off their nose, giving me advice about my career. And I was thinking, I ain't taking any advice from you. And so I was going through all that stuff, and I finally, there were so many things going on that I didn't like. I just didn't like anything that was going on around us. And I didn't trust anyone, and I didn't like anything that was happening. And so everything came to a head at one point, one morning. And I just bowed out. I said, I'm out. This is it. And so it was June 2nd, 1992, about 10 o'clock in the morning when it all came down. I remember it well.
Yeah.
So that's the point that I officially left the Kentucky HeadHunters. It was a sudden, abrupt retreat.
I understand. Did you feel some sort of relief or release after that, where you're like, okay, I'm glad that's behind me? Or what?
Man.
How did you feel right after that?
As soon as that decision came to fruition, I felt like a pickup truck had been lifted off my shoulders, man. I felt like, oh, good. Whew, okay. I mean, I didn't care what happened after that. I didn't care what the outcome was, what the result would be. I just knew that I felt better. I suddenly felt better.
Right, right. Well, that's interesting. You know, what's so interesting to me is that, you know, when you were playing the gigs in Arizona and just getting started on that, you probably, if somebody had sat down and said, what do you want? Everything that you got would have kind of been what you had in your mind. But
Yeah,
then
I mean,
then when you got there, it wasn't necessarily what you thought it was.
Yeah, I listen to Joyce Meyer quite often, and she always says it's really bad when you climb the ladder of success and you get up there realizing you got your ladder against the wrong building. That's kind of the way I felt.
Exactly.
Like, hey, wait a minute, because then what I imagined, the things I had imagined my career to be like, when I got there, it was nothing like that whatsoever. It didn't resemble anything that I ever dreamed of or imagined it to be.
Right. Right.
So I thought, well, this ain't nothing like I'm not interested in any of this. If I can't do this the way I want to, then I don't care about it.
Right. For young artists who are, you know, looking to make it in the music industry, you know, considering that, what advice would you give them about which wall they need the ladder leaned up against?
Well, I don't know. I've had a lot of young artists come to me, you know, for counsel. And, you know, I just go, look, you don't really know what you're getting into here. But I know that you're going to do it. Matter of fact, I sat down, my pastor up in Tennessee called me. This was several years ago, but he called me, said, and I was still living in Tennessee at the time. He said, hey, I've got a pastor friend who's got these two boys, and they're fixing to get in the music business. And he said, would you mind sitting down and talking to them? I said, I'll be glad to, you know. And so we had a little coffee, met for some coffee, and these two boys came in. And so I sat and talked to them. I told them every horror story I could come up with. I said, you know, you got to be prepared to lose your life. You got to be prepared to lose your family. You got to be prepared to lose any kind of freedom you have, musical freedom as well as just physical freedom. I said, and I told them every horror story I could come up with to try to discourage them. And they went ahead and they got a record deal, and they became Kings of Leon. So, you know, two Christian boys, preachers' kids, but man, they went through hell on earth through their career. I mean, they went through everything I told them was going to happen to them. And you know, that I don't know how they're doing these days, but I mean, they got big, they got huge, and my pastor said every once in a while they'll call me, just have me ride the plane with them so I could talk to them and keep them worked out. So yeah, there's no Nashville don't offer you any classes on how to handle your success. You know, they don't say, well, now here's what's going to happen. And so you need to be ready for that. I just tell everybody, you know, just watch your back. Don't sign stuff without making sure you know what you're signing. Watch your back. Make sure that everything is at least going somewhere toward your favor rather than theirs. And that's about all you can do, because they're gonna climb in there one way or the other if they get the opportunity. You can't stop that, because they're seeing their dream fulfilled, you know.
Well, you know, you make a good point, and the truth of the matter is, nobody, maybe somebody has, but I haven't seen it. Nobody writes a book that says, here's what you do when you get successful.
Yeah.
The books are all written to tell you how to get success. They don't tell you how to operate in the middle of success.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And with ours, like I said, ours happened so fast. We didn't have a chance to figure out anything. We didn't have a chance to breathe. I mean, we were on we got on tour with Hank, buddy, and that became tour of the year. I mean, we were in there 20,000 people a night. I mean, it was just going and blowing, and we didn't have time to even stop and take a breath.
Right, right.
It was crazy.
So during that period of time, I mean, obviously you're just, so busy, but you had the experience there in the mechanic's office. Was God on your mind during those times, or did you have time for anything spiritual, or was it just basically just trying to survive?
Oh no, I was on that bus. The hours we spent on that bus, I was studying the Bible feverishly. I had that Bible, man. I was marking it up, and I was wearing that thing out, and so God was growing in me daily. I mean, without that, I don't tell them what I'd have done. Don't tell them where I'd ended up if I hadn't have gotten that Bible that day on that mechanic's desk. That was God's way of preparing me and protecting me from what was about to come into my life. And that Bible, man, it was in right there. It was in my hand all the time. And I was studying, man. I was just loving it. I was just eating it up.
Oh, very good. He dropped a little piece of manna there on the corner of the mechanics.
Yep. I still have that Bible over here in my bookshelf. I kept that.
So when you got out of Kentucky HeadHunters, made that cut, then you and your brother formed another group and cut some albums, released some songs, had some pretty good success there.
Yeah.
How did that compare to the Kentucky HeadHunter days?
Well, it was certainly, he and I came out with he left the band with me, I guess, because blood's thicker than water. He didn't really want to. And, it upset his life in a big way. But he did it. And we made 2 albums on Asylum Records. And those 2 albums are treasures to me, because it's me and him just really getting to sing and really flourish in this harmony, the family harmony thing that we did. And boy, both those albums are just precious to me. So it was a blessing to get to do that. Although we got back out on the road, and we've gone back down to being a warm-up act. We were warming up for everybody. We warmed up for Reba. We did 25 shows with George Jones. Everybody out there, that was on top. We were their warm-up act. We did a bunch of shows with everybody. And we had the first song we put out, Let Go, went up to the top 10, which was, it went to a higher, it didn't go to 1, but it went to like 6, which was a higher radio chart than we'd ever had. And Let Go was a great song written by a friend of mine. And, so we were suddenly, me and Doug were out front, like Everly Brother kind of thing. And we had a band, but it wasn't long before I felt the same kind of misery again. I started feeling that same nagging misery. And I was like, because I thought, okay, this will fix it. It's just me and Doug. We won't have, we can kind of just keep a handle on everything. We're not having a whole band to work out stuff with. And I thought that would fix it. But there was, stuff started happening. We went on a radio promotion tour, and we went on motorcycles. We didn't take our radio entourage with us and fly here and there and go in vans here and there. I said, I'll tell you how we do this radio promotion. We'll go on our motorcycles. So we took our motorcycles and left Nashville and went all the way down through Georgia and all the way down through Daytona and back up and over to New Orleans and back up to Nashville again. 3 weeks. We was out on my bike for 3 weeks, and we got, pretty good reception from all the radio stations that we stopped at, and kept our schedules a little loose because we didn't know what weather we'd be running into. It was just me and him on motorcycles. And so we came to a place in Birmingham. Birmingham was our last stop. And we went up to the door of the radio station, and And I was just about to open the door, and this lady came out of the door, and she said, the program manager don't want to see y'all. He don't want to see y'all. He don't want to talk to you. And she locked the door as she was coming out. And I thought, you know what? That's it for me. I am not putting up anywhere. I mean, if this guy can't take a few minutes to talk to us after we've ridden all the way here, you know, and I just took it personal, and I was already feeling fed up anyway. I was just fed up with the whole thing. I was fed up with the country music industry. You know, we went to an award show, and I was sitting there and I was watching it all go on. And I told my brother once, there was something going on stage that was just ridiculous. And I looked at my brother, I said, "Are we really involved in this?" And I told, and I was so appalled by what this act that I was watching. And I told him, I said, "Let me tell you something. When the next commercial comes out, when the next commercial break takes place, I'm leaving here, and I am never coming back to another country music award show. I don't care how many we're nominated for." And that's what I did. I left. And so when we left Birmingham, I got on a motorcycle, and Doug and I were riding. I was just like, you know what, this is stupid. And so we stopped and got gas and rested for a minute. I said, "Doug, I'm sorry to say this, but I said, I'm done." He's like, "Oh no, not again. You know, what are you doing?" So I felt so, you know, that to this day, that's my regret that, you know, I jostled his life around with my crazy decisions. And but the next day, when we got back to Nashville, next day I got up and called the manager, called the record label, called the publicist, called the agents, and told them I was out. And my manager told me I was crazy. He said, "You're crazy. You'll never work in this town again." And I went, "Bingo, that's exactly what I'm trying to get to." So,
oh man.
So I whacked it off right there. And you know, because by that time I was feeling like I had a call to ministry on my life. And so I was like, I'm gonna lose my life. You know, the word says if you hold on to your life, you'll lose it. If you give up your life, lose your life for my sake, you'll find it. I was like, okay, that's the verse I'm walking in. I'm going to lose my life. Now, if he had called me back, if he had called me back into the music business, or called me back to the Kentucky HeadHunters, if that would have been his desire, I'd have gladly went. Because I didn't say I'm not going to do these things and these things. I just said, I'm giving it to you today. You tell me what you want me to do, because I don't know anymore. If he'd have pulled me back into that, I'd have gladly went, and it would have been fine. But I was not happy there, and so I felt him pulling me out of it, and I didn't know what a call to ministry meant for me. I had no idea. You know, I thought, well, maybe I'll just climb off the country music bus and I'll climb over here on the ministry bus and I'll just keep rolling. But that ain't what happened. I wasn't in the shape he needed me to be in to answer a call to ministry. So he took me on a wild ride, another wild ride. I went the wild ride up, and then I was a wild ride coming down. And wow, man, took me through a lot of remolding and remaking. Because, you know, my pride was through the roof. I mean, I'd been standing on these big stages, and I'd won all the awards, and I sold all these records, and 1,000 people line up every night for an autograph and tell me how great I was. And so he couldn't use me like that. He had to tear down and redo me. And
so,
boy.
So the two things, both times where you were having this feeling of misery or just very malcontent with the circumstances, to the point where you just said, you know, I got to get out of this. I mean, do you think that was just God working in you, or how would you describe that feeling? What was the base or the root of that feeling?
I think it was God prompting me, you know, when he said, is that it? When I got that Grammy, I think he was, it reminds me of when God called Abraham. He said, Abraham, I want you to pack up all your stuff and I want you to go that way. He didn't tell him where he was going. He just said, I want you to head that way. And Abraham took off, and then he stopped for a while. And I think that's kind of what I did. I headed off that way, and then I got this other thing with my brother, and I'm blessed and pleased that those two albums came out. I love them both to this day. So that was the good that came out of all things work together for good. So there was that. So, but I think that I balked. I think that I thought, okay, this will work. This will be this, but it wasn't. I wasn't through yet. I wasn't all the way out. I think he wanted me all the way out, and he was going to make sure that I did get all the way out. And that, with that program manager up in Birmingham that refused to talk to us, that was the straw that broke the camel's back on that one. Because I thought, this is ridiculous. Why am I doing this?
And he thought he was just didn't have time for you, but in reality, it was God pushing you that extra.
Yeah, I think it was. I do. It was, and I don't know. I was just when I gave all that, when I lost my life for His sake, I put it all in His hands, and and I've told my people, my congregations over the years, once you give your life to God, you truly hand it over to Him. It's none of your business anymore what He gives you or takes from you. You just are in His will. You are just to be in His will. And if He's taking something from you that may be dear to you, He's doing it for a good reason. He's doing it because He's needing to protect you from something, or He's needing to move you on from something. I said, so what He gives you and what He takes from you is really none of your business anymore. And that's the way I felt about my life from that point on to this day. It's none of my business.
Do you think most people have trouble making that kind of commitment to God and just saying, whatever you do, I'm just following you. I'm giving up this dream that I had or whatever, and just whatever it is you want from me. I mean, do you think people have trouble making that commitment?
Well, I did. I just got, I just determined to do so. I just thought, all right, if this is if it says, if I lose my life for your sake, I'll find it, then I want to find out what that is. I want to find what that is. Mm-hmm. And so I double dog dare you. I just double dog dared him. And boy, I mean, he's given me a beautiful life since that time. And, it was, the transition of it was rough. I went from rock star to poverty and for a couple of years. And I was just like, whoa, man, this is not fun. but I still wasn't miserable. I was still okay. And I remember I was back out in Arizona again. I went back out there and lived for a while, and I was living on royalty checks. I knew I'd have about 5 years of good enough checks that if I downsized, I could kind of keep myself floating until the Lord kind of showed me where. But through various circumstances, that didn't work out that way. And so at one point I was out in Arizona, living in a little house out in the desert out there, and I had just adopted a newborn baby, and I was married at the time, and I was way between the royalty checks, and I had no money. I couldn't get a job because I was too famous. So there was that. If I went and applied for a job, they'd go, "You're Rick Lee Phelps." So I was like, well, that ain't working. And so I was sitting there kind of like, well, I ain't got a royalty check coming in for another month or two. And I found myself, I had one potato in my house. I didn't have any money and no way to get any. Royalty checks were still ways down the road. And so I went outside and I looked up in the sky and I said, Lord, you told me that if I lost my life, that you would find me. You told me that you'd meet all my needs according to your riches and glory by Christ Jesus. You promised me all this. And I said, I'm just out here to remind you of that. I said, I got one potato and I got no food for my child. I got a brand new baby in here. I got no food for her. And I said, so that's my situation. And about the time I got that out of my mouth, I looked down my driveway, and there was a van pulling up in my driveway, a little minivan. And to get out to my house at that time, you had to go, when you got off the main road, you had to go 3 miles down a washboard road that just beat your car to death to get out there. So this van's driving up my driveway, and I thought, who's this? Who's driving up my driveway? And when they got closer, I recognized them. It was a couple that I had met at a church service about 3 weeks before that. Just met them there, sat behind them in a church service, introduced myself. We talked for 10 minutes, and that was it. And I thought, that's that couple that I met in church. First of all, how did they find my house? Second of all, what are they doing here? And they got out, and I said, hey, how y'all doing? Fine. And they went around and opened the back of their van, and it was crammed full from top to bottom of groceries. They said, we brought these groceries to you. I was like, wow. That's pretty cool right there.
Oh, wow. That's definitely a guy over there, huh?
That was his way of going, I got this. I'm teaching you to trust me. And so you've got to let me do that. And so I went, okay, I'll take my hands off this. I see how this works. And so he was teaching me and molding me into what I needed to be to get to this point in my life.
Very good. Well, I know for the sake of time, we probably can't cover everything from that point to where you are now, but maybe if you can give us a thumbnail of how you went from there, or how you wound up in Navarre, Florida, where you currently reside. And
I'll try to give you the nickel version here. Let's see. Okay, so I ended up down here. My wife now, we've been married almost 20 years. I knew her. Matter of fact, the day job I took when I gave up on the music business in Nashville was I went to work for her. She was my boss. She later became our fan club president for the HeadHunters. So we've been friends for a long time. She was not married anymore, and I was not married anymore. And she came up. She was good friends with my brother's wife. I was living in my brother's house at the time. She came up there to visit my brother's wife, and we got, we were old friends, been great friends for years. She said, I'm living down in Navarre. I was like, what's Navarre? What's that? And I'd never heard of Navarre. She said, I got a house down there, and she stayed up there for a while. We started dating a little bit. And so I came down here, and she got a beautiful house here on the Sound near Coastal Waterway here. And she brought me down here, and I thought, I think I can do this. And we were talking about getting married at the time. And so we did. We got married, and I moved down here, with her. And then I got ordained. My pastor up in Tennessee ordained me right about 15 years ago now. And I started a little Bible study here. One person came to the house, had a Bible study. That one person turned into 2 more, and then it turned into 3 or 4 more. And, we got to where we couldn't park here anymore in the neighborhood. So I rented a little building up the street here, the Navarre Area Board of Realtors office conference room. I rented that for Wednesday nights. We did that every Wednesday night for 13 years. It's a small group Bible study. I was playing in a little rock and roll band out here on the beach. God gave me the gift of being able to play in another band that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the whole experience. We played together for about the same 13 years. It was a beautiful thing. I mean, it was great to be in another really good band. I never thought I'd get to be in another band. So we played out there, and that's how I pretty much got the people to come to my church, was playing in this beach bar out there. And the last song we do would be Spirit in the Sky. And I would do it in the middle of Spirit in the Sky. I'd stop and do a little 3-minute sermon. about just about, about how your life is precious. And this is the moment that you have, and you need to enjoy the moment and not be worried about tomorrow or yesterday or whatever. Just a little simple sermon. That's how I built my church congregation over here in Navarre. They heard that and they started coming. They heard I had a church, so they started coming to church. And I built up this little group over there for 13 years. And COVID hit, and I had to shut down. They shut that building down, so I had to shut down. The band shut down, and so I just found myself here at the house. And so, of course, I was continuing Bible study. I started having a little Bible study in the house with my granddaughter here, and then I started doing a podcast, just an audio podcast, just a verse by verse Bible study that I stick out there every once in a while. I've got a group page for my ministry, and I stick one out there every now and then, and just kind of hanging out here and painting, doing my painting and all that. So that's kind of where I am today. I'm just kind of starting to figure out what this being retired might be like,
I hear you. Well, tell us a little bit about the painting. I've looked over you've got a website there with your paintings, and I went and looked over all that. And you've got some interesting pieces there. Obviously got some talent for painting. How in the world did you get into that or discover that talent?
I kind of stumbled into it. I've never done any painting. About 10 years ago, I've done a few pencil drawings in my life, just doodling here and there, but I've never really bothered with. I was kind of intimidated by paint. Didn't know how that really worked. And so my wife done some painting, and she had an easel here with a bunch of paints in it. And my granddaughter asked me to paint her, to draw her a picture of a guitar that she wanted to hang on her wall. And so I've done some pencil drawing. So I kind of set that thing up and got it kind of working on it. And I was using my wife's easel, and as I was drawing it, I thought, well, there's paint right there. I'm going to see how this works. This paint thing works. And so I started painting this guitar, and when I finished it, I was like, huh. And everybody's like, well, that's really good. I was like, okay. So I started painting, and I've been painting ever since. I've painted, I don't know how many paintings I've done. I do about 4 or 5 a year, I guess, about all I can get done. But it's become something that I really do have a passion for now. And so I painted this, that dolly right there. It's kind of hard. I just finished that one. Now I'm working on this. This is going to be a Johnny Cash. That's Johnny Cash holding up that flag. So I do a lot of portraits and I do other things too, but I'm real drawn to doing portraits of people. And I've done quite a few of them. I did a whole theme of artists that I had, had some dealing with, or I had been on a record label with, or my heroes or whatever, my musical heroes. Kind of did a whole theme of that, and then I started kind of venturing off trying to do other things as well.
Right. Now we're going to put the website up. We'll put that up on the screen there so folks can go visit that. I saw you got prints for sale on there that people can get. What do you do with your originals? You hang on to those, or what do you do with those?
I hang on. There's certain ones that my wife goes, you ain't selling that. You ain't selling that. The dolly here behind me, that is a commission piece. There's a couple that lives up in Sevierville, Tennessee. They have a cabin that they rent out up there, and so he's bought 3 or 4 paintings from me, and so he contacted me, want me to. Since Dolly's such a big deal up in that area, he wanted to put this big painting up in his cabin. So that's I did that one, and I got prints of her as well. I don't think I got her up on the website yet, but I do have prints of her as well. So I try to make sure I always get prints done. I've got a fellow that does my photos for me, does a great job, and so I try to make sure. There's a few I did that I didn't get prints of that I was sorry about, and so I make sure I don't let any paintings go out of here until I have prints done.
Very important. Very important.
Yeah.
Well, What do you see God doing? I mean, you COVID kind of shuts you down. You had the Bible study. You're doing a little bit there at your home now. I mean, what's the future hold from a spiritual perspective for Ricky Lee?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. My dad, like I said, he's 92. He lives up in Northeast Arkansas, and I'm gonna make more frequent trips up there to see him and make sure he's okay and help him out with things. He's still doing real good. He's still driving. He's not walking as good as he used to, but he's mentally sound. Everything, he's got sound. He told me the other day, I have a sound mind. I said, yeah, you do. Your mind is sound. But I'm going to expect to go up there more often and hang out with him. And I'm going to continue painting, and I'm probably going to continue putting my little podcast out to the folks that are interested in it. And I'm kind of taking it easier these days than I ever have in my life. I've always been kind of just out there going, like a madman. So I'm trying to slow down a little bit.
I hear you. I well understand that. Well, a little bird told me that it might be possible that some of these stories of your life might wind up in a book. What's going on with that? Is that something we might see in the future?
Well, that whole thing about losing your life for his sake, I found that's not a one-time thing. That's an everyday thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a manuscript written. It's sitting there and it's written. It's not published. And that little bird that told you that, her new nickname is Squeaky. Because she calls herself the squeaky wheel, so I just call her Squeaky now. But she's always after me about, how you getting that book published? You getting that book published? She helped me with it quite a bit. She kept me on track as I was writing it, and so she did a great job in helping me kind of keep everything flowing as it should be flowing. I've never written a book before. Don't think I wrote this one. I think God wrote this book because it was flowing out of me, and I was like, what am I doing? It's kind of like painting. I didn't know what I was doing with that either. Still don't. But anyway, I think that there'll be a time that book will be published. I don't think that time is today. It might be tomorrow. But when I get up tomorrow and I'm gonna lose my life for his sake, and see what he wants. When he wants that book out, that book will be out whether I like it or
not. Right.
So my point is, my whole point about that is, I don't. If I take the reins of that book, and I force it to be published somewhere, I can self-publish it today if I want to. But if I force that book to be published, and I get thrown back out into the limelight, as an author now rather than a country music singer or whatever. Because that has the potential of throwing me back out there. If I get back out in the limelight for something I forced, I'm going to be miserable again, and I'm not going through that again. If God shines down upon me and he puts that book out, then it'll be okay. If I put my hands on it and try to do it my way, I ain't going there anymore. I went in through that twice with this whole being miserable, and I ain't doing that anymore. I'm going to stay at peace. And if he wants that book out, then he'll figure out a way to get it out, and he'll let me know to do anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because the time, I don't know what might happen if I force it out there.
Right.
I don't know. It may hurt somebody's feelings, or it may put me in a position where, I've got to go through a bunch of crap that I don't really want to do. Put me back out there again where I'm going to have to be dealing with that kind of fame thing again, or what, I don't know. That's why I'm touching it. That book may be there for my children to put out for all I know. I don't know. It may not be for my lifetime. It may happen tomorrow, but I don't know. So I ain't touching it. But it's about 300-page book and full of all these stories and story of my life. And
well, I think honestly, I think what you just said is the story, or is the perspective we need to have about all things. I mean, how many times do we all try to get ahead of God? We think we know what we need to do. We try to push something. We try to force something. And in the end, we wind up where we don't want to be.
Yeah. I ain't going for it. Yeah. He said, trust me. He said, trust me, and I'll take care of this. I'm like, I'm good with that. And so, because I'm not trying to promote me, and I'm not trying to do, but if I grab a hold of this and do it, then all that's telling me is that I'm trying to promote me.
Right.
And I'm not, it's for his glory and in his time. Everything, not just that book, but everything in my life is going to be that way. I'm not having it any other way. Right.
Well, that's a good approach. I'll take my oil can back to Squeaky and squirt a little oil.
Yeah, I love her. She's awesome.
I can't get that Squeak to quiet down a little bit.
She's a great lady. I love her, and I appreciate her kind of being, pushing me a little bit. But I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. This is none of my business. This book is none of my business.
I hear you. Well, you said something else in the middle of that I think we all really need to hear, and that is, that commitment that you made to lose your life is a daily thing. I mean,
it is a daily thing.
We can't do that one time because we're kind of we slide back down the hill, right? I mean,
it's easy to slip back into, oh yeah, I got this. I know what to do here. I don't know what to do past getting off this screen with you. I don't know what to do past that.
Right. Oh goodness. Well,
but I want to say, I wouldn't trade this life, this giving up my life every day for every Grammy that they've ever made. I wouldn't trade it. I love the life I have. I have peace. I have joy, and he's given me he did give me I did find my great life.
Well, I saw a quote the other day by Bob Marley, of all people. Bob Marley's not somebody I would quote on a regular basis, but kind of goes along with this. He did have one perspective, right, which I think a lot of Americans could hear. And I may not have this quote exactly, but he basically said, the day you decide to get out of the rat race is the day you win the race.
Yeah, that's pretty well put, I'd say.
And so, yeah, sometimes we just need to slow down and let God have each day and just see what He's got for us, rather than pushing and trying to make something happen.
Oh God, I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't have the energy, and I know if I do stuff, it's not going to work out right. It's just not. It's just not. I've tried it and I've seen the results every time. It never does exactly work out right.
Right. Well, we've talked about a lot of things. Before I let you go, Squeaky did put another little bug in my ear about a story about your brother as a baby being healed, and that was pretty impactful. And if you don't mind relating that story to us, I think folks would like to hear it.
I'd be glad to. My brother was brand spanking new born, so that made me about 7 years old, and so my memory of it is kind of what my memory is, and I've gotten more of the story. Well, my dad wrote the story down, and he's a Assembly of God pastor, so he wrote the story down and sent it to their magazine. There's a Pentecostal Evangel magazine, and this was a story, and they published the story, went out all over the world.
Hmm.
And he told the story about what happened. And so my brother, he was, like I say, newborn, brand spanking new kid. And at some point he couldn't breathe very well. And so they were mom and dad was trying to figure out what was going on. And suddenly his arms were turning blue and his legs were turning blue. So they took him to the hospital, and they said they didn't know what was going on. And so on the way back we was bringing him home from the hospital, and Dad was freaking out a little bit, and Mom was freaking out, and Doug was laying in the center of the front seat, just laying there between Mom and Dad. And I remember looking over at him from the back seat, and we got to this point where we crossed from Arkansas into Missouri. We lived in Missouri at that time, so we crossed over the bridge, the river there, and right after you cross the bridge, there was a right-hand blacktop road. So instead of going home, my dad turned right and went down this blacktop road. It's just fields out there, a few farmers and houses out there scattered. And my mom said, "What are you doing?" Dad said, "I don't know." He said, it felt like the wheel turned and I couldn't stop it. And she's like, "Well, okay, well, what are you doing? Where are we going?" He said, "I don't know." He said, I just felt the wheel turn. And we went down, and there was a lady that came to our church at that time, lived in a little country house out there. And he pulled right into her yard. And this lady she was one of our prayer warriors, we call them, back in those days. And he pulled up in her front yard, and as soon as he pulled up, she ran out the front door and said, "Bring that baby in here." Like nobody called her and told her. She said, "Bring that baby in here." And so we got in there and gathered around, and suddenly there was a few of the neighbors were there. I don't know where they came from, but everybody was around my brother praying. And just in a minute or two, his arms turned back to the right color and his legs turned back, and he was breathing okay again. And her name was Juanita. This lady's name was Juanita. And she said, "I dreamed last night about a little boy whose arms and legs were turning blue, and that he was brought here, and I prayed for him. And sure enough, that's what happened. I was there. I saw it all go down." And so she had that dream the night before. So when she ran out of the house, said, "Bring that baby in here," she already knew what was going on. And he was healed from that time on. And he grew up to be a big man. He outweighs me 50 pounds. so he, whatever. And I do believe, and my mother's asked him over the years, "Son, when did you get saved?" And he went, I don't know. I don't remember getting saved. And I think my dad told me that not too long ago, he said, "I think the Lord told me that your brother was saved when he was healed at 2 months old. He was saved when he was healed." And I thought, you know what, that makes sense to me. And because if he don't remember it, then, but I know he's a Christian. I know he's a devout, loves the Lord Christian. And so I just, that was the way it went down. He was healed right before my face. I'll swear to it till my dying day. And,
well, people want to pass stories like that off, in our modern technological, intellectual days.
Yeah.
But if God wasn't supernatural, then why would we serve him and worship him and pray to him? And if we can't expect great things from him,
he's doing miracles. He's doing miracles around us all the time. And if we're tuned in to him, if we seek him first, the kingdom of God and his righteousness, we'll see these miracles start taking place around our lives. But if we're blind to it, if we're shut, if we're not seeking him first, then we're going to be blind to the miracles that are going on around us. They happen around me all the time. Miracles all the time. Just through my daily hanging out. Happen to me all the time. I see them everywhere I look. And they're simple things. It might be a simple thing, but it gets your attention. You go, "Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting." And then you start seeing this stuff every day, all day long. And if you're seeking him, you know, these days, we need to get Jesus up here so close we can't see anything else, because everything else going on is deception, lies. It's all smoke and mirrors. So we better get him up here where we just can't even see anything else, because we don't need to see any of that. We don't need to see it. I've turned the news off a year ago, 2 years ago. I turned it off. I'm not watching this anymore, because it's all the devil is the prince of the power of the air, and everything that's coming through those airwaves at me is lies. If I do watch the news, I just go, okay, well, whatever they just said, it's the exact opposite of that. So now I know what's really true. I've got a TV here in my office. I watch Grit, which is right now is John Wayne, and that's what I pretty much stay on.
Stick with the old stuff. Can't go wrong with the old stuff.
Yeah, because you know, back then men were men, and you know, that's I like that.
Right. Well, it is hard to figure out the truth. I think we just need to we need to remember that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life.
He is the truth. Nothing else is the truth. Nothing else out there is the truth. Whatever you're hearing, wherever you're hearing it from, probably not the truth. There's a few truth being told, you know, through guys like you out there that's putting out podcasts and things, that you can find the truth. If you sift through it enough, you'll, oh yeah, there's some truth. That's truth, and you can find it. And then, but everything else is deception, and it's running rampant. It's running rampant. It's so mangled up that it's getting hard to tell the truth from the lies. So everybody be on guard.
Absolutely.
Be alert. Wake up.
Well, Ricky Lee, we appreciate you joining us today. We appreciate you sharing the story. I know it's going to be an encouragement to folks that hear it. And I just pray that more people will do exactly what you have done and just say, hey, I'm going to lose my life so that I can find it in Christ. And
that's the only way to go. That's the only way to go. It's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate it. And
I appreciate it, Scotty. Thanks for inviting me on. And God bless everybody out there that hears this and sees it. And, you know, let go. Let go. And you'll be all right.
Amen.